Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Krishna's argument to Arjuna that you should fight, if you win or you lose, you'll be happy. That wasn't Krishna's ultimate argument to Arjuna. But because Arjuna had made a complaint to Krishna that he didn't want to fight, he was complaining on the material platform of sense gratification. So Krishna addressed that point also. Arjuna was addressing the point of dharma, or religious duty, that it will be irreligious or dharmic to kill so many men, and especially those who are gurus and kinsmen. So, although he was speaking of duty, Arjuna was actually concerned about getting sinful reactions, by which he would have to stop it. In other words, Arjuna was speaking from the platform of sense gratification. So Krishna answered him on this platform that either way, you're the winner. If you are defeated, if you die, you'll go to the heavenly planet. And if you are victorious in the fight, then you'll enjoy sovereignty over the earth. But that's not all that Krishna said. He didn't only answer Arjuna on the material platform, but he took Arjuna to a higher platform of understanding that we're not the body, we're the soul, and our highest duty is to act on the platform of the soul. Many people are surprised, how is it that Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight? Well, it seems that Arjuna was right in not wanting to fight, and Krishna is wrong in encouraging him to fight. So practically from the material point of view, Arjuna was right, and that is exactly the same argument that he gives to counteract Krishna's promise of happiness either by winning or losing. But Krishna, you are saying that we can be happy by conquering over the earth, but how can we enjoy at the expense of the blood of our kinsmen? So if Krishna had only offered this argument, then we wouldn't have Bhagavad-gita. We might have Arjuna-gita. Because from the moral point of view, from the worldly moral point of view, Arjuna was apparently right. But that is the whole point of Bhagavad-gita, to bring Arjuna beyond ordinary moral principles. Therefore at the end Krishna says, Sarvadharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Give up all moral or ordinary worldly moral principles and simply surrender to me. Generally worldly moral principles are included within bhakti, but sometimes there is a conflict. And unless one has the direct order of Krishna or his direct representative, one should not break ordinary moral principles. So it's true what Krishna said also, that if you win, you'll enjoy the earth, and if you die in battle, you'll go to the heavenly planet. But that is only on the worldly platform. And Arjuna immediately finds some objection to that, which is later substantiated by Krishna, that this material world is dukhalayam, it is a place of misery. So certainly Krishna's advice to Arjuna that either way you will enjoy, that is certainly not his ultimate advice, because one of the main points that Krishna will point out in Bhagavad-gita is that this material world is miserable and temporary anyway. So this advice to Arjuna that either way you will enjoy is not to be taken as absolute instruction. That's why it takes intelligence and guidance from acharyas to understand Shastra. In Gita, Krishna gives many instructions on various levels. So it requires one who has understood the Gita to explain the Gita. Just like we know this so-called Yogi Maharshi Yogi Mahesh or something like that. Maharshi Yogi, something like that. Who has something called university or something like that. So he made his translation of Bhagavad-gita. The first 6 chapters only, because according to him the rest is not very important. Because he says in the 6th chapter that describes the yoga system, and that's it. We don't need anything else. That's the essence of Bhagavad-gita. But that yoga system was rejected by Arjuna. That's something else that was rejected by Arjuna. He rejected Krishna's idea that you can be happy by conquering over the earth planet. He also rejected Krishna's instruction to perform Hatha Yoga. And at the end of chapter 6, Krishna clearly says that the best yogi anyway is the Bhakti yogi. But those whose intelligence is covered by envy of Krishna, they cannot understand. You may wonder, how is it that the Mayavadis, they don't understand Bhagavad-gita as it is? When Krishna clearly says, Bhaktya Mara Vijanati, I can be understood by devotional service. Than me there is nothing greater, O Dhananjaya, Krishna necessarily. Not even slightly. But how is it that the Mayavadis don't understand? Because they're rascals. They misinterpret. They say, for instance, so Krishna said this to Arjuna because Arjuna had a lower adhika, or lower ability to understand. You see, he wasn't a student of Vedanta. He was a politician, and he wasn't a brahmana. He was a grihastha, not a sannyasi. So these instructions were good for him, but they're not really the highest teaching. This is how the Mayavadis interpret. But what does Krishna say to Arjuna? Why I'm speaking this to you? That we know at the beginning of the 4th chapter, Krishna said, I spoke this knowledge to the sun god, who spoke it to Manu, who spoke it to Ikshvaku. And in this way, this knowledge was received in the parampara system through saintly kings. But in course of time, that knowledge became lost in human society. And then Krishna says, but I am speaking the same knowledge to you today. Why? Because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mysteries of the science. So Bhagavad-gita should be understood as it is through devotees. Therefore, this study is systematically through Bhakti Shastri course is very nice. And you may find that when you finish the course, that if you've studied very nicely, you'll have a very good, you'll have a good overview of the general overview of the philosophy. But actually, if you study very nicely, you'll find you'll have more questions. In other words, you'll be basically convinced that Krishna is unlimited, and you can never fully understand Krishna. And there's no limit to how deep we can go in our understanding of the Shastra. I'm feeling myself, I've been reading Prabhupada's books now for a relatively long period of time. And each time I'm reading, I'm feeling that this is something new. I'm finding things which I didn't see. I'm just going deeper and deeper. But still, we can hardly think we're touching the surface. So, another question.
What's the difference between Archana and Bhajana? First question, and second one afterwards.
Yeah. Archana means process of deity worship. Bhajan is a general term which is more or less synonymous with sadhana. Of course, we often use the word bhajan to mean singing certain songs, but another meaning is like sadhana. It's often used to, its usage is often in terms of the kind of sadhana that you'll do for yourself. So archana can be part of one's bhajan. You may personally perform deity worship and then also reading from Shastra, chanting japa and all those things.
What is Bhakti Abhas?
Bhakti Abhas. Abhas literally means a reflection. So Bhakti Abhas means that which is not exactly Bhakti, but which is a reflection of or bears similarity. So when Bhakti is not fully pure, or when it's mixed with material motives, or in other ways if it's improperly performed, that may be called Bhakti Abhas.
Eternal relationship of disciple and spiritual master are broken in case when the disciple fails in this life. What are these relationships? Relationship in the next life?
No, it's not necessarily that if the disciple is unsuccessful, that the relationship is lost. Exactly how the guru-disciple relationship is going on, that is by the mercy of Krishna. Exactly how someone will continue in the next life in Krishna consciousness, that will be by the arrangement of Krishna.
Which of the four regulated principles is connected with developing mercy or compassion towards living entities?
Well, sometimes it's stated differently. Generally it's stated that meat eating destroys mercy. Sometimes it's also stated that intoxication destroys mercy, which we can practically see. Someone who becomes a drunkard or who takes narcotic, heavy drugs, and they lose all feelings for others. A drunken man can beat or even kill his own wife or children, and they can steal the last kopecks from their parents. But basically, all these four sinful activities, they destroy all quality. One who takes meat is neither kind nor clean, certainly not austere either. So actually, sometimes certain principles of sinful life are connected with the destruction of certain principles, but actually, anyone who is sinful in all their qualities, then that's it.
A disciple should inquire from his spiritual master and he should serve him. What should he inquire in particular, and is it possible that his questions be repeated? So can his questions be repeated?
This is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, that we should inquiring about. I'll just quote a well-known verse from Bhagavatam, which I hope that those of you who are Bhakti Shastris should learn this verse. If you don't know, then you should learn, because when you finish Bhakti Shastri, it doesn't mean that you know everything. Not much, that's practically to introduce you to the proper study. So the well-known verse from Bhagavatam is as follows. It's the first two lines. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta, that's the first line. Does anyone know the second line? Jignasu shreya uttamam. Jignasu shreya uttamam. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta means therefore one should surrender to a guru. Therefore it refers to the previous verses, which it is stated that even in the heavenly planets, life is temporary and miserable. So therefore, one should surrender to a guru and inquire about what? About the highest benefit of life. So this is what we should inquire about. Tato Brahma Jignasa. Now we have attained to the human form of life. We should inquire into the absolute truth. And can we ask more than once? Certainly. Prabhupada notes that in the purport of Bhagavad-gita as it is, when Krishna at the end asked Arjuna that, do you feel satisfied now? Are your doubts cleared? And Prabhupada notes in the purport that if necessary, Krishna was ready to speak the whole Bhagavad-gita again to Arjuna to clear his doubts.
If an initiated devotee has not attained to the mode of goodness, and he has not obtained blessings of other devotees, can he serve his spiritual master by the strength of his sincere desire and to make progress, and to thus make progresses in Krishna consciousness and to please his spiritual master?
Yes, Krishna and Guru are looking for sincere desire. They're not even so much looking for the mode of goodness. So there may be many persons who are in the mode of goodness but don't have a sincere desire to serve Krishna. There may be people who are peaceful, self-controlled, learned in Shastra but not interested in serving Krishna. And there may be other persons who are not very cultured but with a sincere desire to serve Krishna. Such persons are better candidates for Krishna consciousness than apparently cultured people without any desire to serve Krishna. Just like Prabhupada was preaching Krishna consciousness in India, and there are many cultured, well-behaved, learned, self-controlled people there who didn't take up his message. And Prabhupada went amongst the most uncultured, fallen hippies, and he found some spark of sincerity that Krishna. So sincerity is ultimately the most important factor. Now the other part of the question, that if you don't have the blessings of the devotees, can you still properly serve Guru and Krishna? Well, it is important to have the blessings of other devotees and not to offend them. You see some devotees who, they're only interested in serving their Guru, but they're not interested in serving the other devotees. Some of them, when the Guru is present, they're very enthusiastic to serve and they're doing everything nicely, but as soon as the Guru goes, they start fighting with the other devotees. So it's better to satisfy all the devotees, then we can probably satisfy Guru and Krishna. Okay, Jai, we'll take more questions tomorrow in a few days. Can't possibly finish all the questions, even if we were to stay here for millions of years. Anyway, the answer to all questions is Chant Hare Krishna. Now let's do that. Hare Krishna.